My name is Jim Hawkins, and Squire Trelawney and Dr. Livesey asked me to write down the whole story of Treasure Island from beginning to end. They told me to tell everything and keep nothing back except the location of the island, since a lot of the treasure is still there. So, here I am, in the year 1750, remembering a time when my father ran the Admiral Benbow Inn, and an old seaman first came to our door. He was a tall, strong, nut-brown man, pulling a sea chest behind him. A dark pigtail fell over the soiled shoulder of his blue coat. His ragged hands had black, broken nails, and the scar across his cheek was a dirty, ugly white. He came in, sat down, and ordered a glass of rum.
A comfortable inn,
he said, drinking slowly.
And in a good location. Many customers, mate?
No, very few,
my father said.
It's a pity.
Well then,
he said,
this is the place for me. All I'll need each day is bacon and eggs in the morning, some rum, and a room with a high window to watch for ships.
He threw down 3 gold pieces.
You can call me Captain,
he said, looking fierce.
Let me know when you need more money to cover my board.
The captain was a very quiet man. All day, he would hang around the cove or the cliffs with a brass telescope, and all evening he would sit next to the fire and drink rum.
Let him be,
my father warned me. Every day the old man went for a walk, and when he returned to the inn, he'd always look over his shoulder and ask,
Have any seafaring men been here?
Occasionally, seamen did arrive at the Admiral Benbow, and he'd spy on them through the curtains. He took me aside one day and held out a silver coin.
I'll pay you every month,
he said,
if you keep your eyes open for a seafaring man with 1 leg.
1 leg?
I said.
Let me know the moment he appears.
On the first of each month, I'd ask him for my wage. He'd stare at me for a long time, but eventually he would give me my coin.
Look out for the seafaring man with 1 leg,
he repeated ominously. How that one-legged man haunted my dreams. On stormy nights, he appeared to me in 1,000 different forms with 1,000 evil expressions. Sometimes his leg was cut off at the knee, and sometimes the entire leg would be missing. The one-legged man would chase me over hedges and into ditches. I thought these nightmares were a high price for my monthly pay, but oddly, the captain himself didn't scare me at all.
More rum!
He'd shout. He'd force our trembling guests to listen to his stories and his singing, and he wouldn't allow anyone to leave.
Pay attention! 15 men on a dead man's chest,
he sang.
Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum.
Everyone sang in answer, joining in for fear of death.
You'd walk the plank in the dry Tortugas,
he said, pointing to one reluctant guest.
And on the bloody Spanish Main,
he said, pointing to another.
You'd be tortured and then hung.
He's lived among the wickedest men on the sea, one guest whispered.
He uses such shocking language,
said another. My father held his head in his hands.
The inn will be ruined. People won't come to be bullied and sent shivering to their beds.
I disagreed and said to my father,
The captain does us good. People are frightened, but they like the excitement. There's even a group of young men who pretend to admire him. They call him Sea Dog and Old Salt, and say he's the sort of man that made England fearsome at sea.
But the money he paid us is long gone,
my father said.
I don't know how to insist on more. Whenever I try, he just stares at me.
Father wrung his hands and looked very ill. So, the captain stayed. He never wrote or received letters, or spoke with anyone but the guests, and then only when drunk. and we never saw inside his great sea chest. Late one afternoon, Dr. Livesey arrived to see my father, who had become quite sick. This well-dressed doctor, with his white, powdered wig, clear eyes, and pleasant manners, contrasted sharply with the filthy, bleary-eyed old sailor, drunk and sitting with his arms on the table. Suddenly, the captain began to sing.
15 men on a dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. Drink and the devil had done for the rest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum.
Dr. Livesey was giving orders for my father's care when the captain banged his hand on the table for quiet. Everyone stopped talking, but Dr. Livesey continued. The captain glared, swore, and said,
Silence there between decks!
Are you addressing me, sir?
The doctor asked.
Aye!
The captain said.
Shut the devil up!
I have only one thing to say, sir,
The doctor replied.
Keep drinking rum and you'll soon be dead, you scoundrel.
The old fellow sprang up, opened a pocket knife, and threatened to pin the doctor to the wall. The doctor spoke louder.
Put that knife away, or I promise, on my honor, you shall hang.
There was a battle of looks, but the captain soon closed his weapon, grumbling like a beaten dog.
And now, sir,
The doctor continued.
I'll be watching you. I'm not only a doctor, but also an officer of the law. If I hear any complaints about you, I'll have you hunted down. So behave.
Soon after, Dr. Livesey rode away, but the captain held his peace that evening, and many evenings to come. Early one frosty January morning, the captain walked to the beach with his cutlass, the sword he always kept by his side, swinging under his old blue coat. He carried his brass telescope under his arm, and he had his hat tilted back on his head. The old man's breath hung in the air like smoke. Mother was helping my sick father upstairs, and I was setting the table for the captain's breakfast, when the door opened and a pale, greasy-looking creature walked in. He was missing 2 fingers from his left hand, and he wore a cutlass too, but he didn't look like a seafaring man.
May I help you, sir?
I asked.
I'll have some rum,
He said.
Are you setting that table for my mate Bill?
It's for the captain.
I said.
Well,
He said.
I expect Bill might like to be called Captain. Does your captain have a scar on one cheek and a pleasant personality when he's drunk? Has he a sea chest that he guards most carefully?
I nodded.
Now, my lad, tell me, is my mate Bill here?
He's out walking.
I said.
He'll return soon.
Said he.
Good.
The stranger hung around the door like a cat waiting for a mouse. Once, when I stepped outside, a change came over his face, and he angrily said,
Get back in here.
Then he suddenly became very polite, half smiling and half sneering.
You're a good boy.
He patted my shoulder.
I have a son of my own.
Then the stranger looked out the window and said cheerfully,
Here comes my friend Bill. Let's move aside, sonny, and we'll give Bill a little surprise. Bless his heart.
He pushed me back until we were both hidden behind the open door. I was very alarmed, but the stranger seemed frightened too. He swallowed hard and grabbed the handle of his cutlass, loosening the blade in its sheath. Unsuspecting, the captain marched in the door and across the room to the table where his breakfast lay.
Bill!
The stranger said in a bold voice as he pushed me away. The captain spun around, and he became so pale that his nose was nearly blue. I felt sorry to see him suddenly turn so old and sick.
Black dog,
gasped the captain, looking as if he'd seen a ghost.
And who else?
The stranger said.
I'm here to see you, Billy, my old shipmate. It's been a while since I lost these 2 fingers.
He held up his mutilated hand.
Well, you found me,
The captain said, recovering.
Here I am. What do you want?
Let's just sit down over there and talk like old shipmates, Billy Bones.
Black Dog said. Then Black Dog looked at me.
Leave us. And I don't want to see you listening to our conversation, Sonny.
I left them at the table, but I did my best to pick up a word or two from where I waited at the bar. I heard mostly curses from the captain.
No, no, no!
He cried.
If I'm going to hang, then everyone will!
They shouted and swore and began to fight, knocking over a chair and table. I ran over to watch as their cutlasses clashed. Then Black Dog let out a cry of pain. He turned and started to run with the captain right behind him. Blood was streaming from Black Dog's left shoulder as he sprinted through the door. The captain took aim with his cutlass and threw it at Black Dog. And he might have split Black Dog's head in half, if not for our big sign saying Admiral Benbow. The frame still has a nick where the sword hit it. Despite his wound, Black Dog ran off and disappeared over the hill. The captain rubbed his eyes and went inside.
Jim,
he said, clutching the wall.
I need some rum.
Are you hurt?
I cried.
Rum,
he repeated.
Rum, rum!
Shaking, I ran to get it, but my hands were so unsteady I broke the glass and had to fill another. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash and ran toward the sound. The captain was lying on the floor. Alarmed by all the noise, Mother came downstairs.
He's drunk. What a disgrace.
She cried.
And with your poor father sick.
My mother and I raised the captain's head. His eyes were closed, and he was breathing loud and hard. I had the rum, but his teeth and jaws were shut tight. We were relieved when the door opened, and we saw Dr. Livesey, here to visit Father.
Oh, Doctor!
Mother cried.
He looks as if he's had a stroke,
said the doctor.
Now, Mrs. Hawkins, run upstairs to your husband. I'll do my best to help this worthless fellow.
The doctor had just loosened the captain's collar when the old man awoke. The captain recognized the doctor and frowned, and then he saw me.
Where's Black Dog?
He asked, trying to raise himself up.
There's no Black Dog here,
said the doctor.
You drank too much and had a stroke.
Where is he?
The captain gasped.
Listen to me,
the doctor said.
One drink won't kill you, but keep drinking one after another and you'll die. Do you understand that? Die.
We hoisted the captain upstairs and put him to bed.
Heed my words,
said the doctor.
Rum will kill you.
Out of earshot, the doctor told me
he should rest for a week. Another stroke could end his sorry life.
Later that day, I stopped at the captain's door with a cool drink. He seemed weak and excited at the same time.
Jim,
he said,
I've been good to you, but now I'm low and alone. Bring me some rum, won't you, matey?
The doctor...
I began. He cursed the doctor.
Doctors are all swabs, only fit to clean a ship,
he said.
What does the doctor know? I've been in places hot as a furnace, with mates fallen sick with yellow fever, and I lived on rum, I tell you. If I can't have some rum now, I'll die, and my death will be your fault, Jim.
He cursed some more, and then began to plead.
Look how my fingers are shaking. I haven't had a drop to drink today. The doctor himself said one glass wouldn't hurt me. I'll give you a gold coin for a drink, Jim.
He was growing far too excited and loud, and my father needed peace and quiet. And the doctor had said one drink wouldn't hurt. Finally, I said,
I don't want your money, except what you owe my father. I'll get you one glass and no more.
When I brought it, he seized it greedily and drank.
Aye,
He said,
that's better. How long must I lie here?
A week, at least.
I replied.
Thunder!
The captain cried loudly.
I can't do that. They'll find out where I am and give me the black spot. I must get away.
He rose from the pillow with great difficulty, holding on to my shoulder with a grip that almost made me cry out. Then he paused, sat up in bed, and said,
Help me up.
But before I could, he fell back on his pillow.
You saw that seafaring man today?
Black Dog?
I asked.
Yes, Black Dog. He's bad, but there are worse men than him from old Flint's crew. They're after my sea chest boy, and if I can't get away...
The old man coughed.
Captain?
I said,
You get on a horse and ride to that doctor and tell him to have them all arrested. All of them! All that's left of old Flint's crew.
The captain closed his eyes, but kept speaking.
I was Flint's first mate, and I'm the only one who knows the secret place Flint told me when he was dying. But don't get the doctor unless Flint's old crew puts the black spot on me, or if you see Black Dog again, or a seafaring man with one leg, him above all.
But what's the black spot?
I asked.
It's a judgment, Jim. An evil summons to my own death.
I gave him some medicine, and he fell into a deep sleep. As it happened, my father died quite suddenly that evening. Our grief, the visits from the neighbors, the funeral arrangements, and the work at the inn kept me too busy to worry about the captain for a few days. He came downstairs to eat his meals as usual, but he drank more rum than he had before. He seemed shut up in his own thoughts, never talking to me or any of the other guests. Then, one frosty afternoon, as I stood at the door, full of sad thoughts, I noticed a blind man outside. He tapped his way down the road using a long stick for a cane. He wore a green cloth over his eyes and a huge, tattered sea cloak with a hood that made him appear deformed. I never saw a more dreadful-looking figure. He stopped and, addressing the air, said,
Will any kind friend inform a poor blind man where he is?
You are at the Admiral Benbow Inn,
I said.
I hear a young voice.
He said,
Will you give me your hand, my kind young friend, and lead me in?
I held out my hand, and the horrible, soft-spoken, eyeless creature gripped me so hard it hurt. I struggled, but the blind man pulled me closer.
Now, boy,
He said.
Take me to the captain, or I'll break your arm.
He gave my arm a wrench that made me cry out.
Sir,
I said,
the captain is ill.
March!
He commanded. The blind man held me tight, and I never heard a voice more cruel, cold, and ugly.
Lead me to him and say, A friend is here to see you, Bill, or else I'll do this.
And he pinched me so hard I thought I'd faint. I walked over to the captain's table and said,
Your friend is here, Bill.
The poor captain raised his head from his arms on the table. The drunkenness went out of his eyes, and he stared at me, sober. He looked mortally sick.
Time for business,
the blind man said.
Boy, take his wrist and bring it near to me.
I took the captain's wrist, and he didn't resist. I brought his hand toward the blind man, and then saw something pass from the blind man's hand into the captain's palm.
And now that's done,
the blind man said. he let go of me and with incredible nimbleness skipped out of the inn. He went out to the road, his stick tap-tap-tapping into the distance. The captain looked sharply into his palm.
10 o'clock!
He cried.
6 hours!
He sprang to his feet, but then staggered backward, putting his hand to his throat. Swaying for a moment, he then fell with a thud to the floor. I ran to him at once.
Mother!
I cried.
Help us! Mother!
But it was too late. The captain was dead. I burst into tears. It was the second death I'd known, and the sorrow of the first was still fresh in my heart.